welcome everybody to this sort of independent little podcast here. I'm joined by Mikhail Pivovarov. This is long time friend of mine and co-producer, engineer of pretty much everything that I've released.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I just figured it would be really cool to, at the end of our production of finishing this latest album, we just kind of kept getting into these like hour-long conversations, and I was like, no, hold on, let's save it. Let's just do a video where we can actually like do a debrief on all of this,
totally.
And so thanks for being here tonight in the studio.
Yeah. My pleasure.
Talk all close to the mic, yeah.
That's right. Use our NPR voices.
Exactly. So I thought I'd kick it off with I had a question right off the bat that like I thought would be interesting.
Okay.
So, this is just about the album, okay? So, if you had to pick one of these descriptions to best fit the album, would you say it's a work of art worthy of winning a Grammy in most every category? Or is it a long-handled claw pole device used for catching squirrels? I mean, which of those two?
Well, I would definitely have to go with the claw pull device, obviously.
Okay. Okay.
It just really grabs you, you know what I mean?
All right, I have some real questions.
Gross, why?
But yeah, well, anyway, I mean, we can get into some of the questions, but I mean, just like looking back right now, it's just insane that it's 9:15 at night right now, and I would normally be saying, okay, time to get to work, and
let's open up a mix or go record a vocal.
Like massive amounts of, this entire thing, I'd say 90% of this album or more took place between the hours of like 9 p.m. and 2 a.m.
Yeah,
it's wild.
I have often thought about your song, The Midnight Hours, as we were working on this, realizing that you basically made this entire record in the midnight hours.
The whole freaking album. Except for, like, anytime we had to, I don't know, include some normal people, like,
well, we had that week-long sprint
of strings and brass
last August. Yeah, strings, brass. We had those guitar sessions with Billy, and like I feel like that was the only time that this record got done in when the sun was out, and then you were just like a vampire in your den, basically working.
Basically,
from 9 p.m. You would put your son down at 9 p.m. and work until 2, 3 in the morning every single day, either editing or arranging or recording.
Yeah, it's because
I think actually like something that maybe a lot of people won't realize is that you introduced me as your co-producer and engineer on this and everything, but like you engineered like at least half of this record because everything that you played except for piano.
Right.
You recorded yourself, all of your vocals, all of your acoustic guitar, all of the electric guitar, which
and actually quite a bit of hand percussion.
That's right. There was quite a bit of hand percussion. Yeah, you played shaker, tambourine, some djembe.
I played djembe, yeah.
You played djembe on Hope and Love.
Trumpet.
That's right. You played trumpet.
And there's also chime tree that I played. On,
yes, it was a bell tree, or what is that?
I guess it's just chimes.
What is that thing called?
Yeah, just the chimes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the Disney transition into the chorus sound.
I guess, yeah.
That's what I always associated with.
I always think of the John Williams stuff too. It's all over that stuff. You listen to anything that involves like the Force in Star Wars.
That's true. That's right. It's clarinet and the and the bell tree.
Yeah, exactly.
The chime tree.
Yeah. But yeah, no. So I think I've talked about it quite a bit, but. This was the first big musical project that I had worked on since my son was born, and it was this record plus 2 other songs.
That's
right. All of the arrangements started coming together a month before he was born, and then and then he came along, and somehow this all still happened.
So would you say that like the expectation of him on the way was sort of the impetus for this whole thing?
That's a good question. A lot of stuff hit at once, really.
Yeah.
There was, I had talked about in this kind of write-up I had done where actually, like the May beforehand, I had released that song "Past My Prime,"
Yeah.
and I was in this real mental state of I actually said I'm done. That's it.
Yeah.
And I just like I had a lot of expectations and a lot of things that just didn't materialize, and eventually, just like I was like, what am I doing? I really need to start living and stop sort of, being just completely disappointed and upset about life in every possible way. And so,
Right.
yeah, I took a bit of a break that summer, and but sort of like came back to music on my own, and especially I think with him on the way. And I was, I was thinking about everything that music has done for me, and listening to all these old recordings that I had made, and all these songs that I used to love, and particularly I had so much more time before he came along, and I'd spend like hours just sitting in front of my monitors listening and just getting inspired again. I was playing piano for hours a day, and then and I really what brought this album about was I was listening to those old recordings that I had done at home, from age. I mean, I have stuff that I recorded when I was 9 years old up through
Wild.
now. Yeah, and so
Wild. I hadn't even picked up an instrument when I was 9.
well, and so there's that, but like it sort of chronicles my whole middle school adventures, my high school, everything, and that particular time in my life has always I've used the word ever present, because there have been a lot of there were a few things that happened that were very clearly traumatic, but then also just it really sort of shaped my way of thinking, and there were a lot of things that ended up really affecting my life from then on. But the thing is, during that time, I remember feeling, where are these songs coming from? What this is just like lightning in a bottle. What? How am I writing this? And what? All of these melodies and all this stuff. And at the time, I did my best, kind of throwing together on my keyboard, and my parents got me some recording equipment and stuff. And so I found myself listening to all of these recordings and thinking, I think probably actually in the context of like, particularly because I said I'm not done yet, and I was then starting to think about my bigger picture of, I have this Spotify playlist where it's like everything that I've released in chronological order.
Yeah. I know the one.
And I was looking at the beginning, and I was like, there's a huge chunk missing. Like, this is a big part of my story. If I'm talking about that, I just want to do something meaningful to me, I want to fill out that whole chunk. And so my goal here was to do all of these songs justice, all the ones that I felt that I could still sign my name under. Then there were a lot of them that I felt really still proud of, that I felt that there was a story to tell. And
what's wild is that there are a lot of songs on here. Like, I've known you for almost 20 years, and I've heard a lot of these songs over that time. And there were a couple of songs that I had never heard before that I think are some of your best writing.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Yeah. Well, some of those that have just been sitting there or living in my brain that I just wanted to put out into the world. And I think it really turned into then this whole process, this journey and like thing as a whole. Because, it's funny, you were saying that it's absolutely ridiculous of me to drop like 21 songs at once. But I was saying, and I understand that from like kind of a marketing standpoint, but
that wasn't even me. That was like some artists I was talking to that were like, dude, if I had 21 songs, like, are you kidding me? I'd milk that for 2 years. I'd drop one every 6 weeks, and I'd just be vacationing in Paris for 2 years while the whole thing churned.
Exactly. No, but that wasn't my, that wasn't my goal with this. And so, for me, that would be like taking a movie and releasing it in 20 different parts, so
Yeah, right.
it's really everything. It's about listening from the top to the bottom and learning about who I was and how I became me and the things that I went through. And so,
well, I mean, it very much is a concept record in that way, and a work of art that needs to be consumed as, as one long piece rather than broken up into bits. And like sometimes the whole singles thing works for an artist, but like, I mean, yeah, you're sort of defying convention by doing it this way, but at the same time, it is sort of really ballsy in my opinion. And there's like a lot of, you're really like slamming it down on the table and being like, listen, like here is this really like juicy cut that you need to sink your teeth into, and like, no, you can't.
You need to take time with this.
Exactly. I mean, it's, we were talking about this the other day about how I think listeners' relationship with music, and I think most of our, like, as a society, relationship with music has just changed so much over the last, like, I mean, even the last like 10, 15 years with the advent of Spotify and things like this, like music has become so easily accessible and almost trivial in a way. And that's manifested in like the way that we write now, the way that we produce, the way that I mix certain songs. I have to think about the fact that like, all right, I have to have maximum impact right away because I got to blow people's ears off because they're only going to give it like 30 seconds before they flip to the next song on their Spotify playlist. But in a time when that is all happening, you have the absolute audacity to be like, I'm going to make a hour and a half long thing that needs to be consumed like a motion picture. Well, and I love that so much.
To that point, I mean, I think really where that came from, and that's why I tell the whole part about me saying like, oh, I'm done and everything, is really what I was done with at that point is I'm done playing the game.
Yeah, totally.
I'm not playing the game. This was for me, and this was for the people who care about my music and my story. And it's like the whole thing. Oh, you got to grab the listener within this part and that. And sure, of course, exactly. I want to make it enjoyable. But I felt that every ounce of this album there came from specifically. Am I conveying the right emotion? And totally. It's all about, it's the importance of does it tell the story, the emotion. It's like, it's like, do we cut this intro so that it'll do? It's like, no, it is. This is what I wrote 22 years ago or whatever. This was part of my story. It's preserved as is.
Well, I remember a big part of our ethos too that we talked about often when we would come to these junctures where we'd be like, okay, well, what if we tried this other thing? What if we did, what if we like tried to change a little bit more about the song? And I think what you kept telling me and what sort of kept grounding me is this idea that like, okay, let's approach this as if, two world-class producers found you when you were like 15, 16 years old, found these songs and said at that time, like, let's make these, as incredible as they can possibly be in, like 2005, 2006 when you were writing this stuff. And I think that ethos of like, we are sort of going to do this, like, what if this record came out like in 2005? And there's like a lot of this stuff that we approached, like even the sound of the drums, for example, like the way that we approached mixing the drums on this record, the way that some of the songs have these like really classical keyboard sounds of these like electric pianos from the 90s that very much have that like boy band thing, and have that like sort of, it's not Casio, but it's, I'm trying to remember. It's like these old Yamaha keyboards or whatever.
Right. Well, it was the Roland that we...
The Roland, that's right. The old Roland sounds. By the way, total funny side note, the guy who started the company Spectrasonics that makes Keyscape was one of the guys programming all of those old Roland sounds.
That's
so the
funny.
Reason that those specific Roland sounds are in Keyscape is because he was the original guy that programmed them for Roland.
That's pretty great.
So kind of wild, right? Yeah. But yeah, I think like our whole ethos about this of like, we're not making a record that is sort of following the tropes of the music industry in 2025. We're making a record that's following like your influences and therefore sort of the tropes of the industry and the sound of like our formative teenage years. Because I mean, I was coming up at the same time. We're the same age. We were listening to the same music at that time. I mean, maybe a little bit different, but we've always had enough overlap that I felt like a lot of kinship to like the kind of influences that you've had.
No, definitely. And I mean, like,
which is again, not to say that I don't think this record stands up and sounds great in 2025. It absolutely does. But I think in a similar way to like, the Bruno Mars Silk Sonic thing, which clearly is like a love letter to the R&B, soul, and funk records of the 1970s. This is very clearly a love letter to, music of the time at which you were writing this stuff, like 2003 to 2006.
It wouldn't have made sense to try to now like do it in a more kind of modern whatever. Like, I mean, the other thing is too is like when I did these recordings back then is like I mocked up a lot. It was MIDI, drums, piano, strings, all this, acoustic guitar, things like that. And a lot of it's rough around the edges, but like the ideas and like the original sound, like when I really went into when I was writing it, I would hear it in my head of how I'd like, and so that always stayed with me. And so like I think I had a starting point for like what kind of song it should be, but I think, though, that one of the things that really did help actually was getting a little bit of space from the songs.
A little bit.
Working on all of the stuff we've done.
Yeah. 15 years of experience is a hell of a thing.
Then I think being in the emotional place I was, and then digging up all of the crap that I did with all of my saved journal entries and instant messenger conversations and emails and just immersing myself in that. And I wanted, and I was reading things and understanding now certain lines that I wrote. I said, oh, right, that's why I wrote that. It's like there's subtext to it, and it's And then I tried to play to that with the arrangement. It's like, no, this is, even though it's like, this isn't just my loud rock song or whatever. There's a desperation here, or there's something that I need to capture in the harmonic content of it. And so, or the sounds or whatever. And so it was such a very meticulous process of doing that. And I just, I tried to make sure that every time that I went to go do vocals on this stuff, I'd spend a while just again like remembering what month, what day did I write this, what was happening, read journal entries, spend hours getting myself in this place, turn off all the lights in here, surround myself, and then just sing the song like 60 times until I was literally just like, until I listened back and I'm like, oh, I'm 14 again. I'm 15 again. This doesn't sound like me now. This sounds like that's him. That's me singing back then, and I'm telling the story right. And and so I think no, but I mean the thing that actually that's sort of bringing me into a little bit with was the strings. With this, I was just thinking about all the parts and the strings and everything, and this was unique with the orchestra stuff that we did for sure.
That's right. Yeah. No, I think we, when I think people are going to be listening to this record, there are several songs. There's the majority of the record has strings, but then there are several songs that are like entirely focused around the orchestra. And, I think we've talked a lot about, to both of our ears, I think we really achieved that like big Hollywood film score / cinematic pop orchestra sound. And it sounds like, 60 players playing in a room, which was the goal. I mean, we were using for reference Josh Groban recordings where he's in a room with an orchestra.
The Beauty and the Beast, his
right,
on Disney, yeah.
Yes, we use that as a reference. We use a lot of like Alan Silvestri scores,
right?
Film composer for those that might not know. He did Forrest Gump, right?
Yes. Yep.
So But yeah, we used all of these huge cinematic, very like expensive sounding recordings because again, they actually put 60 players in a room, and they played it until it was right.
see, the thing is, I had in my drawer upstairs, I had a stack of $800,000 that I was gonna spend on an orchestra, but I actually spent it on lotto tickets because I thought I could get even more, but so instead, since
Great, it was a great investment.
Since I didn't have that anymore, what we had to do was, there were some tricks to our recording, but
so at its core, I think we should just tell people like it's, the strings are 4, sometimes 5 players, 5 when we had a couple of songs with upright
contrabass,
yeah. We had a string quartet essentially playing the string parts. And, when you write for orchestra, you're still writing for 4 string parts. You've got your violin 1 section, violin 2 section, your cello section, your viola section. And then we just kept recording them over and over and over and stacking, doing what's called overdubbing until we had, like, on some songs, I think, did we get up to 10 stacks?
I think 9 was the most, but there was a trick to it, and this was something that I pulled out of my ass. And
you didn't pull it out of your ass. You did a lot of research, and you did a lot of thinking.
A lot of thinking. No, I'm joking, but no, but I did. Yes, I did a lot of thinking about this, and I sent Mikhail this diagram once. I don't know if you remember. I sent this. I drew up this diagram. I was like,
I remember exactly where I was when I got it. I was driving home from Rachel Sage's place. I pulled into a parking lot, looking at it like, what the hell is this?
I was like, can we do this? And because we've done the stacks of strings on every recording, and while I've loved how it has come out, it's never quite been the sound for me. It's never quite done the it's worked for the songs it's been a part of. Sure. Well, I guess the thing is, what I aimed to do with this record, with like A Day's End and Year of April, we had never tried before.
Yeah.
And I did not think that the way that we had been doing it would give us the right sound for this.
No, of course. I mean, because the idea, like the mission statement was achieving that sound of actually a 60-piece orchestra in a room, and that feeling that you get when you're sitting in the audience and listening to 60 people play on stage.
Right.
And that's different than, doing the, like we're gonna make it sound like a Five for Fighting record. That's a very different. It's a valid sound. It's a totally, or like even the Vanessa Carlton, the famous Vanessa Carlton string sound.
Right.
That's what I would consider like the orchestral. It's not even orchestral. It's like the pop rock string sound. It's the pop rock string sound, and you do that by having like 1 or 2 players stack with close mics, and it's a very like in your face, very direct, very immediate sound. And if you listen to those Alan Silvestri recordings, if you listen to the Josh Groban stuff, if you listen to stuff that's really supposed to make you feel like you're in a concert hall in the middle of the hall, sitting 80 feet away from the strings, and you're just like embraced by this wall of sound that's coming off of the stage of like these people playing. It's not a very direct sound. You don't hear, you can't pick out every single violin. What you can pick out is this sort of like warm glob,
moving wall.
Exactly. And things, and in order to achieve that, like we had to sort of think very indirectly. And I think when you sent me that thing, I remember I was initially very resistant to looking at it like why do we need like 12 microphones to record one pass of strings? Like, this seems silly. Let's do like a conductor microphone, a microphone behind your head at the conductor position, so you can get the sound of like, them in front of you, and then we close mic each section, and boom, we're done. But what we ended up doing, what I'm very glad that you pushed for, is doing 2 more sets of microphones. So there was like a wider pair, which was sort of like imagining those would be like the stage mics, and then there were these ambient microphones.
Put up at the ceiling.
Basically, literally pointed like at the
20
corners
feet
of the ceiling.
Yeah.
Yes, as far away and pointed as far away from the players as possible. So they were really just capturing like reflections and ambience in this room. And it was a very large room that we recorded in at our buddy Jason Polis's place. I think the ceilings must be...
I thought 20 feet, something like that, maybe.
It's probably less than 20 feet, but I mean, it's at least 16. Like my ceiling here is 12 feet, and I think his ceiling is a little higher than mine. Like my ceiling at the corner is 12 feet. But yeah, I mean, it was a very tall room, very large room. I mean, for a residential studio. And yeah, so we had all of these indirect microphones, and then I think really the kicker of all of it was when you stumbled upon East West Spaces, which is really awesome reverb plugin.
Before we get to that, though, I think because yes, the whole goal of it was. I feel like, and actually I had written this down as a talking point that for us is that I felt in our production of this, and I thought that this was sort of a more sophistication of the production process, was thinking more in terms of space for everything. And so, so the idea was like, okay, we've got all these mics and everything, and in my head, I know that, like, for instance, for people who maybe don't know, it's like when I do vocal overdubs, if I'm going to make like a big group of me and I want it to sound like a big group, if I sing the exact same way every time, it just sounds louder, it doesn't sound bigger. And so what changes makes it bigger is the differences in the nuances and everything. And so my thought, particularly that we're dealing with space, was, wouldn't we get that much more if we're capturing the room and the reflections everywhere, is if we actually physically move these players within the room. And so every time they move, the reflections in the room change. We capture something different. It's as if a different person's in a different spot. And so
which it's sort of further simulating that idea of like you have a section of people, like, and those people aren't all sitting in the same place. They're sitting, like several feet apart from each other.
And so my idea was you push up the faders and suddenly there's everybody, but yes, you were saying about the East-West reverb, which I have to definitely give a shout out to, because I was like trying to figure out, I was like, just regular reverb is not gonna do. We're trying to really do something specific here, which is sound like a concert hall. Like we need to, and so just a really brief explanation. So what the East-West reverb does, it's a convolution reverb. So what they've done is, this specific one was very cool. They went to a whole bunch of different concert halls and fired these impulses from the stage and then measured the response from different positions within the room, more sort of near field and far. And you can actually have like the near microphone reverb. It'll emulate the whole room, the back, that. And then you have like this 4-piece reverb thing. And then the other part of it that I thought was incredibly exciting was the fact that they actually fired the different impulses based on where the section was sitting. So it was like strings, brass, woodwinds,
and oftentimes it would be where the sound is actually coming from. So, for example, when they would do the impulses for the French horns, they actually pointed the speaker that fires the impulse into the back of the room. And for people that don't totally understand this, what they basically do when you get an impulse response for a convolution reverb is you go into a room that you're trying to later emulate the reverb of, and there's a variety of what's called impulses, and those those go all the way from like a loud click that's like a very quick loud click, and then you have a microphone somewhere in the room recording how the room resonates with that click, and in that way you can like record the length of decay in the room. You can really record like how the room is going to treat this full spectrum of sound. And then occasionally they'll do these things that are like signal sweeps from a very low frequency all the way up to a very high to see how the room treats different frequencies and where there's going to be buildup in certain things. So you really, when you do this right, you end up getting a very accurate sonic picture of what that room or hall or whatever sounds like, and then you can later add it to any element that you're working on in a mix. So you can record something that maybe doesn't have the sound of that room, but then apply that sound
as if it took place in that room.
Exactly. And I think that was like, it was so crucial to this process of being able to like put these players that were actually recorded in not a very reverby, in a very dry sounding space.
Yeah.
So we have this recording that's like very meticulous, very dry and very exacting, and then we're able to like really select, like, did we record this in a Berlin concert hall? Did we record this on a soundstage in LA? And what I thought was particularly fascinating, and yes, of course, there was like the beauty of those east-west reverbs and how like they not only just like set up a speaker on the stage and said, okay, that's what the hall sounds like. They set up, okay, this is where the first violin sits, so this is what the hall sounds like from the first violin position, and here's from the second violin position, and whatever. And and again, the thing that really tripped me up was because a French horn, the way that you hold it, the sound actually plays into the back behind the player. When they recorded like the French horns and things like that, and I'm harping on this because there's a good amount of French horn on the record.
Yeah,
they recorded the response firing into the back of the room, and we actually used that, and it sounded more like, oh yeah,
good.
Exactly, and it's like, oh wow, yeah, that's different than if I used the violin impulse in that same hall.
Yeah, and so those pieces that we've done, I mean, like the full instrumentation of it, like from Woodwinds, is I believe it was a flute, clarinet, bassoon, then brass was trumpet, trombone, French horn, and then violin 1, violin 2, viola, cello, and contrabass. There may have been...
There was like oboe on something? Wasn't there? Or
I don't think so. No, not on this one. But
and we're and so all of these things that we're talking about. There's a couple of songs on the record. I think "Year of April" is like a major standout as far as this orchestral sound that have this. That really like I think we like just totally nailed this. Like film score. Disney was brought up a lot. I think that was something from our youth.
It really sounds awesome.
Exactly.
That one and A Day's End, honestly, because A Day's End was the earliest one of these that I wrote, which I wrote when I was 13, and I had
we had recorded before. We had recorded it as a solo piano piece.
Well, the thing is, I had recorded a million versions of this between. It was always like my classic one that I'd go back to. It was like, ooh, I got a new microphone. Let me re-record A Day's End. It was like, let me redo, that. Or I got GarageBand with my laptop for college. Let me do A Day's End. But hearing it now, it's like, yeah, that's it. And then just in I really put so much heart into the arrangements and everything to just I want someone to listen to it and feel the way I did when I wrote it, and that's what I really tried to bring to it. But so then what we were able to do with those microphones, let's say for instance with the strings, is then with the east-west reverb is all right, so like we'll put the ambient microphones, send those to the back of the room, where they captured those, and then maybe the midfield ones, like a little mix of the close and and it sounds incredible, I think.
Yeah, no, I think it was a real game changer. I remember when you sort of stumbled onto that. When you stumbled onto that plugin, and it was like, oh, okay, yeah, now this is starting to sound like,
Yeah. I think it's I mean, just the strategies that like we so much of this album was planning. So much of it was planning.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, there's no freaking way we would have been able to do this. I was thinking about how when you and I recorded, we started working on Something to Believe in 2008, and it took 2 years, and it was 10 songs. And in, I believe, like 15 months, we recorded 23 songs for this. So, with the album plus Differently and Something Special.
I mean, we've learned so much.
Yeah.
It's wild. And yes, we had an immense amount of planning, because I think that what's really interesting to think about is that, yes, you and I have been working on this since January of 24. You were working on this, like you had started writing
August
arrangements
of 23.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then we recorded from January of 24, basically up until April of this year. because we had the last song, Hope and Love, that, we had the crazy thought to basically re-record from, which I'm sure we'll get to. But we basically re-record. We were recording until about this time last month.
And I almost died. actually, yeah. Actually, I didn't mean it that way, but actually, I did almost die on a plane.
Jesus Christ! Yeah, that's dark.
Yeah, Oof. No. I was gonna say just from my from working myself to the bone, but yeah, no. Then also I came to New York, and then we had an emergency landing for an engine fire. But that's yeah.
Flying super safe right now. Everybody should do it. Holy crap. But yeah, what I was gonna say is people I think would be really interested to learn that, like, although yes, we've been working on this diligently since like we started recording drums January of 24, I think you and I, of like days where we actually were recording together, there was probably like 15 or 16 days all said and done that we spent together. And the rest of it was you recording on your own, me mixing, us doing and obviously like we spent a ton of time like in mix revision sessions and like really dialing things in just right. But as far as like the actual like big meaty chunk of the recording, you and I did that together over a course of like 15, 16 days. And the only reason we were able to achieve it that way was the meticulous planning and, the arguably overthinking of it. But,
that was the most important part, really. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We planned and planned and planned. And I'm still shocked that we were able to execute. I mean, we had sort of, when, we had a very short time with especially the string players because we, I think we had like 3 days with them and we were supposed to get like 15 or 16 songs.
Yeah.
And we were like, okay, the only way that this is going to work, it wasn't even 3 days. It was like 2.5 days or something like that. And I think we ended up pushing it to 3, but, we had like very specifically planned out like, okay, we need to get like 6 songs on the first day, and then we're going to get like 5 on the second day, and then the last day will be like 3 or whatever. And I think we only got 4 on the first day, and I remember just like feeling this like massive sense of panic of like, oh no, how are we going to finish this?
And then also figuring out, all right, like which ones are going to be the heavy lifts. So let's structure them in a way that, all right, if we knock this out, and then we'll break for lunch so that they can sort of like regroup, and then we'll get back to it was so like strategized.
Down to the song choices at what time of day we were going to record them.
For sure. No, there were
which is hilarious to me because then there's on the other side of the coin, all of the, for example, like bass guitar recording was we had like a week where I think we would get together like every other night or whatever, and it would just be like, all right man, what do you feel like playing tonight?
Exactly.
So much looser. Looser.
That week was like, it was funny because I expected the week with the orchestra is I expected like. There were definitely moments of me doing, oh, wow, this is amazing. But so much of it was just focus, I just need focus. We got to, all right, that's great. Sounds great. Sounds good. Yes. Keep going. The other thing with that, too, is that like I tried to be as meticulous as possible in my actually arranging and like, expression notes, notation, the articulations, all that stuff. So that literally there were no questions. We just put it in front of them, read it exactly as is, talk about it a little bit, and they did. And the other thing that we should really actually mention here is that there's no way we could have done it if the players were not as superstars as they were.
We got literally the best people in the world.
That's the other thing is that there's no like, yes, we did all this planning, but it wouldn't. The only way we're able to actually plan this is because we knew that these are the only people who can do this.
And I mean, let's just name names like Katie Kresick, Chris Gordona, Max Mostyn, and oh my God, what's Anja's last name?
Anja Wood. Yeah,
and Tony Maselli on contrabass on those three tunes.
Contraband.
That's But yeah, I mean, these are people who have like dedicated their life to this craft and that are honestly, in my opinion, the best of the best, top of the top that I've ever heard. And, they all do these incredible high profile things. Like, you look any of these musicians up and their credits are like, Five for Fighting, Ariana Grande, like, these massive, massive things. I remember, I think Katie was in the studio with Ariana Grande like 3 weeks after our session. And I was like, that's funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we absolutely couldn't have done it without them. And, our same thing to our brass and woodwinds players. I mean, they were absolutely, absolutely phenomenal. I mean, like everybody, I think honestly, like everybody who contributed to this record,
that was part of the planning. That was who can we get, who's going to pull this off. It was just all part of the planning. So I mean, like that, I had this spreadsheet of like all the things to do, and I had the orchestral arrangements columns, and like I just for 3 months, I think I spent on arrangements, it's just wild to just think about all of that, and then I mean, especially just all of the work at and then to look at the final folder of just masters, and it's like, oh, there it is. There it all is. Yeah. I mean, it definitely does look like a lot because it's 21 files,
Well, it's all more than 21 files. It is because I send you three different
instrumentals and stuff.
Yeah. So hold on a second. It's 42 files times 3. It's 126 files.
Okay.
Your master folder is 126 files.
I just mean if you look at the track list on the record,
No, of course. I mean, it's wild to see the culmination of all of it as these mixed down stereo files of like, well, there it is.
Yeah, exactly.
It's done. It's,
I feel like we're going to probably have to do a part 2 of this.
Probably.
Just based on the time I thought we were going to take on this.
That's okay. I'm looking at a timer. We're at 46 minutes.
Okay. I wanted to at least just because I did write down some stuff that I'd love to ask you about, actually.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
It reminds me of the. Did you ever see the episode of The Office where Michael's giving Toby his like exit interview, and he's just like, and someone's HR sits in on it, and he's like, oh, okay, well, let me ask my questions. He's like, who do you think you are?
That's right. That's right.
What gives you the right?
And he's just like completely deadpan.
So I think you should give him your watch. But yeah, as part of your exit interview, would you ever work with me again? Well, so this is serious.
Oh, definitely not. No, absolutely not.
Okay.
No, we're done.
So I had written this down. Having worked with me on pretty much my entire catalog since we began working on Something to Believe in 2008, how did you feel my writing may have been different with these songs, which I wrote before we even met? How were they similar?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. Well, I'm going to start by saying that I think the best song that I think you've ever written, you wrote last year, which is Something Special, and that was a part of this project that we released as a single in September of last year.
Yeah.
I think it's a difficult question to answer because there are some things that like in your writing from this time that I think are really timeless. Mm-hmm. There's that song Jealous Eyes that I've been talking about a ton as we've been working on this record. And it's probably one of my favorite things you've ever written. It's a rocker, and it's like, the lyrics are just like so deep and really like hard hitting. And I feel like it's as perfect of a rock chorus as like I can think of. And it's very mature, and it's like very timeless, and like, it's just that line of like, it's just a matter of who will live the life you've dreamt of.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, that just like, doesn't matter how old you are, that hits. And, and you wrote that when you were like 16 years old.
That's 15. Yeah, I remember.
It's insane.
Yeah, it's just, it's just a matter of who will live the life you dream of,
That's
who will
right.
win the glance of your jealous eyes.
Yeah, yeah, man, it's so good. It's such a good lyric, and just like the melody is amazing. So there's like some stuff where I feel like your writing hasn't changed all that much, because you're still the person you were when you wrote those songs. I mean, you're more mature, obviously, and you are, you're more weathered with life, and you have different experiences to draw on. But like at the
Yeah.
end of the day, like I feel like your musical tastes haven't changed all that much. I mean, there's I feel like there is definitely, you look at something like Something Special, or oh man, help me, what was the other one? The other
Differently.
single. And Differently, yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think a terrific song. But like you look at those songs, and I feel like they're more mature, but I feel like they have their roots in a lot of the songs that are on this record that you wrote when you were 15, 16, 17 years old. I feel like your arranging, obviously, I mean, has dramatically improved. I mean, the arrangements on this record are, I mean, amazing. There's some of the best like orchestral arranging I've ever heard. I mean, certainly that I've ever worked on. I mean, it's incredible.
Thanks, man.
But yeah, it's tough to gauge, and it's tough to gauge because, like I said, Jealous Eyes, one of the older songs that we've ever recorded together, and one of my favorite ones you've ever written. Then you flash forward to, what you wrote 20 years after that, which is Something Special, which is, probably my favorite thing you've ever written. So, I don't know if that answers the question, but I think ultimately, I think there's more maturity now. Mm-hmm. I think there's more consistent maturity now. Because I think that there's obviously maturity from the writing that you did, all those years ago. Like I said, again, I'm going to keep harping on it. Like Jealous Eyes, I feel like that's a song that like somebody in their 30s writes after like having experienced some real stuff. You know what I mean? And you wrote that at 15, which I think, also for listeners and people that like are interested in your story, I think it also is a really interesting way to get into your mind and where you were and like what level of emotional maturity you were at when you were at this time, and that like you were capable of such profound thinking and writing, and then there's some stuff that is like maybe a little bit more like, oh yeah, I believe that like a 15, 16-year-old wrote these lyrics. Granted, a very talented or an articulate 15 and 16-year-old, but there's some stuff that obviously is like a little bit, I don't know what's the best way of putting it. Like it has this like childlike wonder,
I'll speak to that for one quick second. That I feel that as far as my experience is that like I obviously always really try to write with my whole heart, but I feel that possibly in the past what I did was sort of, and this was I think kind of just how I lived emotionally, was just with reckless abandon. And possibly wrote with reckless abandon. It was just, it was a little bit more chaotic. It was a little bit just, I need to scream out how I'm feeling, and here's what it is,
But yeah, I mean, there it is. I think there's maybe, more consistent maturity now, but I think as far as like, quality of your writing, I think, you've been writing these, especially like melodies and some of the harmonic choices that you've been making. And there's some stuff where I feel like you were actually even more adventurous when you were younger. I think sort of before you understood the rules of like writing.
Right.
What's the song?
Like Till the End of Time. Where, like,
Till the End of Time, where we change keys like 16 times in the song.
It's like technically if you're following the tonic, you're changing the tonic like 20 times, but like it's like there's borrowing. I mean, a lot of that does like it is like sort of classical in that way, and I think inspired by some of the movie scores, which is kind of like here's a theme, in this key, then in this key, then in this key, and which is incredible
to me that like you were thinking like that as a teenager, like while I was out there like trying to plunk out power chords on an electric guitar, being like, duh.
I mean, it's just I think part of it was just like. Writing, which is what I heard, like, and that was part of the whole thing that I really did. one of the reasons why I wanted to go back to these songs, because I did feel like I was amazing myself, and I'm not trying to be me. It was just, it was just saying that like, I didn't know where these melody ideas were coming from, but I was
Yeah.
hearing them and I was singing them, and so then I'd follow where they were going with the chords, and suddenly we were all in these different keys, and it was just what happened, and I
Well,
wasn't necessarily thinking about it.
I think something that you've said that I've really like locked into over the years, you have this thing that you say that music is what feelings sound like. And I think that what was probably happening was you were experiencing all of these feelings, and the only
Right.
way that you could make sense of them was through, sitting at the piano and, just like letting, you're like one of those musicians who, like, even when we met, you were that guy where people were like, yeah, Nick is that guy where you can play your song to him and then he'll play it back at you better than you played it at him. Like you've had this innate ability of like, you hear it and you've like internalized it right away. So I think, that's what you can do, that when you hear things played back at you. So I would imagine that you've also had the ability to like do that when you're hearing things internally, and then like
Sure.
basically have them come out through your hands the way that you're hearing in your head. I mean, it's, it's amazing.
I think that like one of the things that really did inspire me from a young age, before even starting to write songs, was the idea that like, I mean, I've come to accept that one of my I would say either like a blessing and a curse is that I've just always felt everything tremendously, and like
Yeah.
I, through my life have, both suffered and enjoyed from just feeling everything so heavily. And I remember
Yeah.
just watching movies, even just, the 90s kids movies or whatever, and there would be a score, there'd be some little melody from some instrument or something would come in, and it would pull me, and I would feel like, just, and I was really, I just fell in love with the idea that like this music could have no words and it could make
Right.
me feel something. And so yeah, I think I just found it as this kind of tool for communicating something that to me was bigger than words.
Yeah.
But well, I appreciate that, man. Yeah, I mean, again, not trying to be like me, but I just honestly, really, because we've worked on like all of my music, I was just curious to see like if you had thoughts on like how the earlier stuff compared to this stuff.